at least 70% of people who train jiu-jitsu are training as a hobby. They're not full-time competitors. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they don't compete ever, but their main goal is to train as a hobby. They want to get in shape. They want to have some camaraderie. They want to develop some ability. And those people are constantly asking me, I can only train twice a week. How can I get better? This is one of the answers. You master these fundamental movements. So now when you go to class and you encounter this new technique, your body is able to digest it and actually use it in a reasonable amount of time.
So Brandon, congratulations. Apparently, as of this morning, we were the #1 selling book in the martial arts section on Amazon and in the wrestling section on Amazon. I'm imagining the wrestling section is a little bit smaller than the martial arts section, but it's still cool that
I'll take
it. That. So congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations to you as well. To us.
Yay, us. What I was hoping to do with you, if that's all right, is to go through various topics we covered in the book and kind of delve a little bit deeper into them to provide an independent resource. You know, maybe people don't like books, and maybe they can still get something of value out of these conversations. One of the very first section in the book is called Advanced Fundamentals. So what do you mean? Everybody knows what fundamentals are, or thinks they know what fundamentals are. What are advanced fundamentals?
So what I really wanted to do with that portion of the book was I started with the most fundamental building block you could, which is not even fundamental techniques as maybe a cross choke or a scissor sweep, but the fundamental movements. So shrimping, bridging, technical stand up, we call technical sit, what I call butt double, these sort of movements. And really what I wanted to do is almost everybody who trains jiu-jitsu at any sort of school they've been forced to do these movements in the warm-up. Their coach is always yelling at them about doing these warm-ups. But I think a lot of times, at least in my experience, people don't see the value in these techniques, right? They and you've been training a long time too, Stephan, so you know that no one likes to do the warm-up and people kind of are they just want to get to the rolling part. A lot of times people don't even want to listen in class. They just want to get to the rolling. So my goal really was for that portion of the book was to show people not only how to properly do these movements, but also to show them just how important they are in actual techniques. So all the techniques that we chose in that section were based entirely on, they are great examples of how you use these movements very clearly to pull off, in my opinion, great techniques. So that's what really ties all these techniques together. And I want to make that clear because otherwise the techniques might seem a little bit disconnected. But what ties them together is that they all really, really utilize these basic fundamental building blocks that we all know already. The shrimp, the bridge, the technical stand-up, all this stuff. So that was my goal, is to kind of showcase that.
Well, why don't we take a couple of those? Let's take the technical stand-up. I think pretty much everybody understands what that is. You're there, you're on your back, you come up to a sitting position with one leg out, you plant a hand on the floor, maybe you make some distance with one of your feet by kicking, and then you basically tripod up, and then you come up. So you're going from the ground to your feet in a reasonably stable, reasonably controlled manner. So, okay, that's pretty obvious application for self-defense, right? Kick a guy in the shins till he backs up and then get up and have enough distance so you don't get punched in the face. But a lot of people don't realize that people use this motion all the time. They use it forwards, they use it backwards, they use it on the elbow, they use it on the shoulder even.
Yeah, it's just an efficient way to move. So, I mean, you're exactly right. You know, most people see the technical stand-up in that self-defense context, and that's really the only way that they apply it. However, like you said, it is all over the place, and there's all kinds of variations. And one of the primary things that you'll use this for is for following people up on a sweep, or maybe backing out. So just to add a little bit to what you said, there's two situations where you have to stand up. When the person is running away from you and you want to stand up, and when a person is pushing into you and you got to stand up. So most of the time you can't use the same motion, right? Because there's two different situations. When the person is running away, so you want to stand up and maintain control, right? When a person is putting weight on you, you don't have to worry so much about control because they're on top of you, but now you got to worry about your stability, right? So when somebody's running away from you, you need your hands to control them. So you got to stand up in a way that doesn't use your hands because you got to maintain your grips. When somebody is putting weight on you, you got to stand up in a way that you won't get crushed when you try to stand up. And that's where the technical stand up comes into play. When somebody is putting weight on you, or when somebody is running away from you in certain situations where you're able to have one hand free so you can put on the mat, or you're able to keep a grip but maintain your elbow position so you can now base up. So they're a little bit interchangeable, but most of the time you're going to use that technical stand up when somebody is kind of running, coming into you, and you're going to use the butt double when somebody's running away from you, even though we will show some examples of using that technical stand up when somebody is kind of still putting some running away from you, excuse me.
Yeah. The first time I ever became aware that the technical stand-up was useful for more than just standing up in, sort of a self-defense situation was from the X-guard sweep, right? You get somebody in X-guard, you knock them down, if you got their leg on your shoulder, you're essentially doing some variation of the technical stand-up, usually off your hand. So you don't just lie there with a guy's leg on your shoulder in a very romantic moment. Like you're trying to get on top there, and you end up in a stack pass position, right? You could conceivably follow it with a stack pass if that's what you wanted to do. Right. What was the breakthrough for you? When did you first realize that the technical stand-up was actually a useful movement?
Actually, probably the same technique, the X-guard sweep, because what really clicked to me was all of the elements of the self-defense technical stand-up are present in that X-guard technical stand-up. So I'm not covering up, but my hand is normally here because I'm trying to control the ankle, right? I even do the self-defense kick to make space, to push the weight off of me so I can stand up easier. And so in my mind, that's like, just as you said, it's the absolute best example of that technical stand-up. And I probably started doing that when I was like late blue, maybe early purple belt. And I realized like, wow, this is the exact same movement that I learned for self-defense, and now I'm applying it in this situation. And that really kind of made something click to me. And I think it was that was when I kind of started noticing these same sort of patterns all over the place. We're using that technical stand-up all over the place. But that's definitely the technique that made it stick for me, or that made it kind of put that thought into my head that these fundamental movements are really the building blocks for even the fundamental techniques that we use.
I had used the technical stand-up and the X-guard sweep, the sort of the foundational X-guard sweep, thousands of times probably. But I think it was you. I'm like 99% sure that it was you who drove home, to me anyway, that bottom leg keeps on kicking away the guy's leg as you start coming up. So thank you for that, because that actually makes a gigantic difference and increased the finishing percentage and decreased the percentage of times that the sweep had bad outcomes for me. So
well, even if you look at a high level, you'll see people get into an X-guard situation and they'll hit that same stand-up sweep, but their follow or their get up is poor, and the person is able to scramble away. Right? I mean, I've seen this several times. I mean, I'm not dogging anybody here, but I've seen some high-level people start off with a very good position and then kind of mess up that stand-up. And it wasn't really based on the opponent's movement. They simply just kind of, I don't know if they were on their weak side or whatever, but they came up in a very uncoordinated way, and it allowed their opponent to slip away because they were off balance. They had to post their hand, and then all of a sudden the opponent gets away. So that idea of maintaining control as you get up is so important. At a high level, you got to be able to pursue people. You got to be able to have second effort. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the other thing is those high-level guys might know the right way to do it, but then they're exhausted, right? So it may not be ingrained enough.
Yeah, it could be.
I'm just looking through the book here, and I'm getting to a technique in the technical stand-up section where you are re-guarding from turtle, right?
Yes.
I believe you're in turtle, I'm on top of you, and then you're using the technical stand-up motion, but in reverse. So that I thought was a really interesting application of the movement.
Yeah, I call that the technical sit, and actually one of my students is the one that first said that. I really like, it makes perfect sense. If you technical stand, you can technical sit, and that's you kind of see that motion in a lot of turtle guard type recoveries, whether the person is in front of you, on the side, or behind you. And again, it's a smooth motion in which you're able to carry somebody's weight because you have that base hand. So when you're recovering guard, not all the time, but most of the time, it's because people are putting pressure trying to pass. So you need a way that you can move while maintaining your stability, right? And that technical sit gives you that sort of option to maintain some control because you have one hand you can hang on with, and then you need that base hand, that base leg, and you need that smooth motion, right, to kind of slide right under your opponent.
And it also makes half of your technical stand-up solo drilling actually useful, right? If the instructor says, okay, 20 technical stand-ups alternating sides, everyone kind of understands the reason to do the first half of the motion, to get up.
Yes.
But then you got to get back down to the ground to do it on the other side. So you might as well make that it's half of your training time, make that have some value too.
Well, that's one reason that I wanted to put it in the book, was because, again, that is one of the most perfect examples of how to use that technical sit motion without changing it. There's no variation, really. You're doing the exact same thing that you would do in the case that you described, where you're standing up and sitting down, standing up and sitting down. And so, again, I really wanted to drive home to the readers and the viewers that you're using these movements, whether you want to or not, they're there. And the more you avoid them, the harder you make it for yourself. You know what I mean? We have a collection of techniques and movements that we can use in jiu-jitsu, and we need to understand that, those things are in place to make things easier for us. You know what I mean? Like, the carpenter doesn't say, I hate hammers. He uses the right tool for the right job, and he's happy to get he knows that if he uses the right tool, he's going to get the success that he wants. Does that make sense? So I think a lot of people, they don't like drilling or repeating things over and over. I love live training too, and that's a huge part of what we do, but we have to refine our movement too. You know what I mean?
Nobody's saying don't live train.
Yeah, exactly.
At some point, you got to roll with somebody to make sure that all this stuff works. Otherwise we're back to Kung Fu land, which I appreciate in a kind of a theoretical kind of way, but it's very theoretical.
Well, I think sometimes people go off in two extremes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you have people in some traditional martial arts that never spar. It's too deadly, we can't spar. Well, that's not right. And then maybe you have people that only live train. They never do positional training or drilling. I think that's over the top too. You know what I mean? Like, the truth is somewhere in the middle. You got to be doing a little bit of everything. Each training method prioritizes certain skills. You know what I mean? So you have to, if you want to develop a complete skill set and you want to do it in an efficient way, you got to use all the tools at hand, whether it's the techniques or the training methods. Both of those things are important.
Let's just go to a couple of the other fundamental movements. Bridging and shrimping, that's pretty obvious. Although everybody knows that you bridge and you shrimp to get out of bad positions. But you're bridging when you're passing the guard. Sometimes you're bridging when you're applying the armbar. That's a simple example.
That's a great example. You got to be able to. You got to use your whole body. Jiu-jitsu is a full body activity, and so you have to be able to put yourself in the right position and use a movement that's efficient enough to do against a wide variety of people in a wide variety of situations. And the bridge, the shrimp, all the other movements that we talked about, those things are very applicable to a wide variety of situations against a wide variety of opponents. You know what I mean? So when we start at the base level, we have to be efficient as possible. And then as we go up, we're going to get more specialized, right? A very complicated technique that's got 15 steps in it. It's a great technique and it's usable, but maybe it's going to have less of an application than just your basic, let's say like a double leg takedown. Not simple, but less steps than 15, you know? So you got to have those.
It's kind of like chunky
movements.
Yeah. You're not,
exactly.
A chess master doesn't look and memorize where every single piece is on the board. It's like, okay, I don't do chess. I don't play much chess, but okay, there's an attack coming from the left flank and the queen is vulnerable over here. Okay, I got it. I can play this.
Yeah.
He's memorizing less individual pieces. And same with jiu-jitsu. I mean, initially somebody starts, they're like, oh my God, I'm grabbing here and there's pressure on my elbow and this and that and they've overloaded their mental span of command.
Yeah.
In the first 3 seconds, and they haven't even really got to the fundamental thing is like, no, this guy's trying to stand up in my guard. Like that's really the central thing that they should be understanding. And instead, like, oh, this extraneous detail, no, that can all go into the category of the guy's trying to stand up.
Well, and that's something that I wanted to try to make clear too, is that even though like jiu-jitsu is complicated in a way, but it's also very simple in a way, right? So when we look at that advanced fundamentals section, we really have, I think we did 5 or 6 fundamental movements. And then we were able to use those movements in, I think, about 30 techniques, so that's 5 times, the application of those six techniques. We included like rolling as well, forward roll, backward roll. And so I wanted people to see how much these techniques are used, or these movements are used, to make things more simple for them, right? Most techniques are some kind of combination of these fundamental movements with a little bit of additional movement involved, right? But at least 50% is going to be those fundamental movements. So if you can master that stuff, you're actually making everything else much easier for you.
Right. Now, why don't we take one more? We did a section on the rolling, right? Which included forward rolls, backward rolls, and then sideways rolls, kind of like an inversion roll.
Yes.
Let's pick a weird example of something where people wouldn't think that those fundamental movements apply. I mean, you showed one choke against the turtle, right? Where you it's kind of get like a clock choke type of grip, and then you basically roll forward. And you call it the judo choke, right?
Yeah, I first saw it in judo. I'm sure somebody in jiu-jitsu knew it, before then, but that's kind of how I saw it. I had done I did judo before I did jiu-jitsu actually, but I don't think I actually learned it in judo. I think I learned it while I was training jiu-jitsu, watching some judo competition, and yeah, again, that's a great example of just putting these base movements in action. Yes, you got to grab the collar, like you said, in the clock choke motion. But once you grab the collar, you're literally just doing a forward roll to kind of activate the technique, and then you end up in a bow and arrow type choke position. So again, it's putting these simple movements into effect to create an actual technique, right?
And also a movement, say like the Shaolin Sweep, right? That's a super fancy sweep. And I once had a high-level black belt who was there the first time that the Shaolin Sweep got busted out in competition. And he described it as this. He goes, basically, he was there, and then there was a big movement, and it was a once-in-a-thousand-year movement, and our guy lost. That was how he described it. Because he didn't understand the sweep. It wasn't part of his game. And it is pretty confusing when you see it the first time, right? There's big helicopter motion, there's legs flipping all over the place, and hey, wait a second, this guy was on bottom and now he's on top. But the way you break it down, it's can you do a backward shoulder roll?
That's it. That's really all it is. I mean, the main execution of that technique is going to depend on if you can do a backwards roll or if you can't. If you can do that, then you can do that sweep. Now, it's not exactly easy to load somebody, right? But I think, if you can load somebody, all you need to do is simply roll backwards. And again, it's a direct application of those very simple movements that I think a lot of times people just glaze over them. Like, oh, I don't need that. And the more you start examining jiu-jitsu and the more you start examining how all these pieces fit together, you realize that you can't escape this stuff if you want to be good. And the better you get at these things, the better you're going to get, right? And you can also, if you really understand how these things go together, you can start improvising as well. You can make up your own techniques. You can kind of improvise and put them together in a new kind of order.
Well, you may not be interested in Bjj Fundamentals, but Bjj Fundamentals are interested in you.
100%. 100%.
They'll take their revenge if you totally ignore them. But man, if your instructor is making you do them anyway, if you're already shrimping, if you're already bridging, if you're already doing forward rolls, if you're already doing backwards rolls, if you're already doing technical stand-ups, if you're already going from a sitting position up onto your knees as part of your warm-up, man, why not make that stuff mean something as opposed to just mobility exercises? I mean, they could make you do jumping jacks, but jumping jacks don't translate to any jiu-jitsu techniques that I know of. Maybe there's one technique out. Can you think of any techniques that translate to a jumping? I mean, increases your endurance.
Yeah. You get some conditioning, but it doesn't contribute to any sort of technical development that I know of, that I can tell.
Well, of course, now that's a challenge. I'm trying to.
Yeah, somebody's gonna comment.
Yeah. Well, please. This is the way jiu-jitsu grows. Maybe jumping jacks will be the new next fundamental. But yeah, and also, I mean, if people can't make it to class, if people can't train for a while, then knowing these motions and just getting good at these motions, it's more than just space filler. It's training your body to move in fundamental ways that you're going to be using for the rest of your jiu-jitsu career.
Yeah, and a couple of other things too. I would say, I mean, maybe you would disagree, but I mean, at least 70% of people who train jiu-jitsu are training as a hobby. They're not full-time competitors. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they don't compete ever, but their main goal is to train as a hobby. They want to get in shape. They want to have some camaraderie. They want to develop some ability. And those people are constantly asking me, I can only train twice a week. How can I get better? This is one of the answers. You master these fundamental movements. So now when you go to class and you encounter this new technique, your body is able to digest it and actually use it in a reasonable amount of time, and it will kind of, it'll shorten that learning curve. Once you, like I said, you'll be able to digest that new technique a little bit easier. And then if you combine that with just a little bit of visualization, when you do that backwards roll, think about that Shaolin Sweep. When you do that technical sit, think about that guard recovery. When you're doing it in the warm-up, or when you're doing it as a warm-up to your own workout after class, So that's something else I wanted people to know, is that people are constantly asking me, how can I get better? This is one of those ways. Of course, it's better if you have a partner, but we don't always have that. You know what I mean? I've had many, many girlfriends, and none of them ever want to drill with me. Okay? So I have to do it by myself. I have to drill my own movements. I have to find other people to train with. So we don't all have access to a really great drill partner or training partner or whatever. So these fundamental movements are another way to prepare you, so when you go to class, you can learn more quickly than someone who's not doing these things.
All right. Thank you so much then for coming on today and talking about this. I think this is an area that will really benefit people. People are looking for the book. They can find it on Amazon.com. They can find it on, I think, Amazon.ca, the Australian Amazon, the UK Amazon, the Italian Amazon. We're in Japan, and maybe the Australian one too. We'll bring you back if you have time, and we'll talk about maybe the butterfly guard and the strategies behind the butterfly guard, if that's all right.
Perfect. One last thing I want to say about those fundamental techniques is it's also going to help for your longevity in jiu-jitsu. It's going to condition your body. You're going to develop some flexibility. You're going to develop some range of motion, which is super important as we start getting a little bit older. 100%.
One of the first things, strength and flexibility just start heading south at a certain age, and if you can keep that up, you'll be in the sport for longer.
Definitely.
All right. Take care, man. I'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you so much.
For more fundamental movements, for a complete butterfly guard game and a complete De La Riva guard game, go check out Nonstop Jiu-Jitsu on Amazon. It's been 6 years in development, and I think we've made it as good as can possibly be for your learning process.